Welcome to the Top 200 Podcast with your host, Herschel Ford.
What's up, everyone? This is Herschel Ford from High School Top 200, and this is the Monday Morning Meeting Podcast. Welcome everyone back. Everyone has, I guess, probably seen such a mean weekend of games. I guess intense, because every game was really good. Every game was close. Every game had, all that drama and heaps of mistakes. I felt there was heaps of mistakes in all these games, but I think that's more like pressure rather than anything else. Because, they're all just young kids, so that's kind of going to happen anyway. But, finally our All Blacks got a win, so it was a happier weekend, I guess, for everybody else too. I guess depends on what side if your team won or not, but I guess in terms of the whole country, the All Blacks won. I don't know if that's a plus for everybody else, but if we get into this week's games, and I guess we got half of what I was talking about before. I floated the idea that, what if we got all the underdogs that were, I guess, considered underdogs? And, I shouldn't say underdogs, because, John McGlashan wasn't the underdog. Ranked higher, though, they have proven themselves pretty much all year. And I've talked about it before with John McGlashan, is that even though they played in a competition which was easier than pretty much everybody else's one, going undefeated regardless of what competition you're in still is a high feat for anybody. It's still something that should be celebrated and should be acknowledged, and in their favor they should get a lot of praise for the fact that they can stay perfect and play the way that they wanted to play all year and complete it the way that they wanted to complete it. And going undefeated against Southland Otago and also King's High School is a really big thing with those three other schools that are in that same competition with them. Especially Southland Boys, who proved that those Otago teams can come out, or those Highlander teams can come up to Auckland and beat Auckland teams like they did with King's College. That really does set sort of a bit of a scale on how good those Otago teams can beat. King's College and King's High School, they should probably have a match, because they'll probably be around the same sort of level as well, because King's High School did a great, had some pretty strong games against John McGlashan as well. So I guess those two Kings would be a pretty good traditional if they ever got to it. But talking about John McGlashan and Nelson College, I felt it finished the way that I thought it would in terms of scoreline. I knew a lot of these games wouldn't be blowout games at all. That's pretty rare in these kind of occasions. Even the North Harbour Auckland ones. But having a game finish like the way that they did, with Nelson scored in the corner, and then sort of had those few minutes left to sort of make a comeback, was pretty much exactly what we want around this time in terms of rugby. Is we want that urgency and that I guess a determination to sneak back a win when they're 10 points down and only so few minutes left. Taylor Thompson also scoring, year 11 kid scoring close to the corner, and just adding so much more pressure to this game. It was such a good thing to see. But seeing Josh Farmer and also Nelisone Malolo probably going head to head like that, I think was a pretty cool I guess, trial, New Zealand secondary school trial. I mean, I know I've ranked Nelasone pretty high, as well as with Josh as well, but seeing them go against each other the way that they did, and both have like huge effects on the game, I think showed how good these two actually are. And they should be in brackets in terms of being in New Zealand secondary schools. And it sucks that they have someone like, Francis Manuleleua as well as the number one player in the country, and is a pretty hard player to get. And there's probably been only one other time in New Zealand secondary school rugby that I've seen in terms of doing high school top 200 where the second fives have been so close together in terms of talent, and the midfield has been, such a hard position to pick, and those three would be pretty high up on that list. I think right now they would be ones to really be looked at, and then obviously guys like Aki Tuivailala as well from Hamilton Boys will probably be another one that you would probably want to look at. But seeing that preview of those two go at each other, and Josh being that big and being able to move that fast and also have that awareness around playing the decoy, playing the guy that will take the shots and gives the offloads, and even that first try where he just kind of held the ball just a little bit longer, and then he got that, and then he gave that pass on the inside. Like, I thought that was such a smart move, and even though it was so simple, it was just he didn't have to do too much. It was more of a freeze and sort of the natural progression of things. But it was that freeze that like a lot of guys would probably panic on, and Josh just just held it off exactly at the right time, at the right moment, and they scored off it straight away. The battle up front, I thought was exactly what was expected. Seeing both forward packs really play well. Like Mitch Morton, like even though they didn't say his name much, and that's not really a way that you should judge someone's, game. But seeing Mitch play like that throughout the whole game from start to finish, and just do heaps and heaps of rubbish, dirty work, cleaning up a lot around the rucks, and he did a lot of work just getting that ball clear for his backs and for his halfback to get that ball out. And I give him a lot of credit in terms of the way that they played in that forward pack. Ben Joseph was the other one that I thought had a really massive game too. Even though he scored a try, it was more about his tackle game. I thought was really impressive. I think probably one of his best games that he's played all year. And I've seen all their games this year for John McGlashan. And that is probably one of the best games that I've seen him play. And it did make a massive difference too. And it was pretty cool to see the two forward packs and how they, marched around the field, because on one hand you saw John McGlashan play pretty tight with each other. They never really spread out the forwards too much, where Nelson had like two good groupings of forwards, and they had Muffy running it, and they had Favai was the other one, Hemipaul, Smith, what's his name, the number 8 as well. Man, I'm spacing on his name, but everyone was getting their runs, and they were sort of spreading it out a lot, moving the ball pretty fast, where John McGlashan just stayed as a group, stayed tight, and then they just worked one pass out. That was all they really did, and then made their way up the field. And then you had obviously Jack Timu and then Josh Farner doing their stuff that they do in that midfield. And I was kind of right, actually. It was more just about forward pack. It was how the forward pack was going to go and how the midfield would go too. Jack had a massive turnover, towards the end of the game. Timmy played really well too. So Kura. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, and I'm happy that John McGlashan got there, and I'm happy that the season that they've been waiting for, I think, in a few years, because they knew that they had a team like this coming through. They knew that this was sort of the time for them to win, because they've got a stacked team with only 2 guys returning next year, which is kind of it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a struggle for them next year, and trying to introduce new players and teaching a new system and having, that 9 and 10 trying to sort of figure everybody else out and where's everyone going to go and how they're going to do it, and all that kind of stuff after such a year like this. But them getting there to the top 4, first time ever, coming this far, massive congrats to all those players and all those guys. And Nelson is going to be one of the stronger ones next year. They have so much guys returning back, and the thing is that Nelson College, I knew how much new players that they had this year. They had 20 guys leave last year, and then they sort of had to, I think schools like this, most of the time they say it's a rebuilding. When you have schools like that have a lot of guys leave, they're not so much rebuilding, they're just reloading. I think there's a big difference. Like Hamilton Boys reload, Christchurch Boys, they reload. Kelston and, St. Peter's, teams like that just reload. They don't actually rebuild. John McGlashan next year have to rebuild. They to get the team that they had, they were rebuilding in this year, and it's working out. Nelson College this year was supposed to be reloading and getting, I guess, a team together that they thought would be good within a year or so, but it just happened sort of this year, and seeing them play the way that they played, I'm pretty. Everyone's got to watch out for Nelson College next year, because if they get that right next year as well, they have a few guys that I know that are going to move into that centre spot next year who are in the, I think there's one from the second 15 and one from the under 16s. There's an under 15 kid that I know that's really good in that midfield. I can't remember what his name is, but he could move in there too as a year 11 next year. But to take that spot of Nelson and Timmy is going to be a hard thing to sort of match. But sometimes when you reload, you're not trying to match it or trying to mimic it or anything like that. You kind of take the players as they are, and then you find what their strong points are, and then you kind of go into that direction and then see what comes of it. Nelson's a team to sort of watch out for next year with how much boys they have coming back. And congratulations to John McGlashan, and can't wait to see them play, because they're going to be going up against Hamilton Boys. Hamilton Boys and New Plymouth Boys, I think was maybe not like the most exciting game. It was pretty frustrating to watch, to be honest. Like I'm.
Under the ball, boys! Go, Ratty!
Hamilton Boys haven't been showing out as good as I thought they would be, and as good as they have been over the last. Well, actually, every time that they make it to this point, they're always playing really, really good rugby. And not to take away from their win or anything like that, I just don't think they're playing really good rugby. The kicking decisions that they made in that game, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn because I think everyone that watched that game and that was a Hamilton Boys fan, I think they're thinking the same thing. Was that there were so many balls that were overkicked, there were so many balls that were aimlessly kicked. There was like no real plan for what was happening with the kicking decisions. I think only one kick out of like 6 or 7 in a row actually went somewhere that I think they got like a 50-22 on one of them, but then all the other ones that led up to that were just terrible, and they were in good positions as well where they could have put themselves in place. Well, there were some penalty ones where he just went and kicked it dead, and there was ones where there was no pressure on him. He had heaps of time just to figure out where he wanted to place that ball, and he just kicked it and it just went dead. I wasn't there and I wasn't feeling the wind and how whatever it is, but those kicks were honestly just going nowhere, and I couldn't understand how they were getting it that wrong with their kicking game. And I think there's that point where you sort of think that Hamilton Boys are just going to pull it in together, and it's just not. It just doesn't look good. Like even with the game last week against Tauranga Boys, where Hamilton Boys had a mean start in that first half, then the second half they just went to sleep and they let Tauranga Boys come back into the game. They let New Plymouth Boys come back into the game. New Plymouth Boys had a penalty right in front and missed a kick, and they're lucky that they missed the kick, because then New Plymouth Boys will be the ones that in the spot. They would have won that game. They missed out on a try. I think Aki went to go and dive on the ball, just sort of slip forward, and it's just one of those games where it's just like that with how much rain there was. But I think for me, when it comes to Hamilton Boys, is that they need to find other attacking options besides Ollie Mathis. And Ollie got hurt. Like if you watch the game, Ollie got hurt going for a ball. I think he went to go and try and kick it, and then someone was diving at the same time. One of those moments, and then they hit him right on the shin. And it was funny too, because I don't think he knew it hurt when it happened. But then it looked like when he went to stand up, and then it finally, I guess, registered to his brain. It was like, bro, that was sore. And then he went back down, and then I thought that he was going to go off. I think if Ollie went off, they would have lost that game. Now, the thing is with that injury is that I don't know how bad that injury actually is. I haven't contacted Nigel or Greg or anyone like that, but I don't even know how bad that injury is. And if that injury takes him out for this week, they're not winning. Not with the way that they're playing right now, they're not going to win. I kind of wish that Aki did a bit more. I kind of wish that Peyton did a bit more. Like when you have superstars in your team like that, you would hope that every opportunity that they have in these kind of games, and Hamilton Boys is not like, this is not new territory to them. They know exactly what's wanted from them, especially as leaders of that team, and the guys that are in that leadership group. They know that they have to stand up. I felt that Ollie was the only one that stood up yesterday in terms of the leadership in that team. The two Liams played really well. They played more of a tight game. I thought the front row went pretty good. I wish maybe the props got a bit more running ball. The locks needed to be a bit more active as well. The flow of the game just wasn't there. I didn't feel like it didn't feel like you were watching a Hamilton Boys team that is always so on the ball as they usually are. And so, like, I kind of, there's a worry about it that comes with it. New Plymouth Boys played everything that they were supposed to play. I thought the New Plymouth Boys forward pack, besides Ollie, sort of outplayed Hamilton Boys. And Jacob Mitchell and that, they really put it to Hamilton Boys. And I think, and like I said, if Ollie didn't play on, I think they would have lost. I think Hamilton Boys would have lost that game. And it's just not it's not the most convincing win that you would like to see at this part of the game, or this part of the year. Knowing that what you're going into come Friday, and knowing that Hamilton Boys is always going to be, they're always in this kind of position this time of the year. They know what's to be expected. These boys have been there before as well, with some of these young boys that played as year 11s and year 12s, and that have been to the top four. They know what it's supposed to be like, and they know what they're supposed to be at. And I know, without even talking to them, that they're not where they're supposed to be, and they're not where they want to be as a team as well. And whatever they need to do to sort it out, I hope they sort it out, because if they play like this, and they play the way that they're playing, and they're playing against John McGlashan in their first game, they're not going to win. If I have to pick it now, I think John McGlashan is going to be in the finals over Hamilton Boys, and I think they're going to beat Hamilton Boys. And that forward pack for John McGlashan is going to be way too good for Hamilton Boys if they don't sort it out. Especially if Ollie doesn't play. If Ollie doesn't end up playing, Hamilton Boys is losing in that first round, and John McGlashan is going to the finals. And that's kind of where I'm at as well when I was watching the game. Even in terms of their scrumming, I didn't think was overly impressive. I didn't think there was sort of much to take from it. The lineouts were okay, not as sharp. I thought timing was off in terms of their moves. I thought New Plymouth did great moving up on I guess the attacking players. They sort of crowded a lot of those runners and made it difficult every single time for someone to clean out the rucks. And it didn't. I just thought that it's kind of like one of those things. It's like, yeah, they won, but it kind of didn't feel deserving. And this is just me just watching as sort of a fan of it. It was like, yeah, they won, but it was like, it didn't feel like they won. It didn't feel like it at all. I feel like they just escaped. That's what it felt like. It felt like they escaped the game and they came out with the win. And so Hamilton Boys have really got to try and figure out what they need to do over these next 4 days to make sure that they don't lose on Friday. And picking right now, I'm picking John McGlashan. Beating the number one team in the country is kind of what it is. And for historical, I guess, that's great. Because, history... And for First 15 Rugby, and I was talking to someone else about this, it's like First 15 Rugby is that there's not a lot of opportunities to make history, like real history. Changing history is not... There's not a lot of things that you can do in First 15 Rugby to change history. And we've seen two right now. John McGlashan being the first John McGlashan team to reach this point, and being the first team from John McGlashan to come to the top four. They could be the first team since, I think it was Otago Boys in 2012 to even pass the first round and go to the finals. And if they play it right, they could be the first South Island team since Christchurch Boys, who won the national title in like 2010 or 2009 or something like that. And that's a long time for the South Island. And for them to do it as Joe McGlashan, who's never been there before, to do it in the first time they get there and make it all the way to the end, is truly like history, watching history in the making, and that's something that may have never been done before. And they should be proud of the efforts that they've already put in so far, but still remember that your task is not done and it's not finished. Because you don't go into a season going, oh, we just want to win our competition, whatever else happens after that, that's fine. No, they go into a competition and go, we're going to win the competition so we can go to South Island, win that and try and win nationals. Which is always the perspective that you should have. Now, I was talking to one of the parents about this, and I talked about how if Westlake Boys win this game, and this is at the Westlake game, if they win this game, and I think in historical kind of context, Westlake Boys have been the most unlucky finalists ever on the road to the top four, in terms of the top four, because they're always winning. For majority of the time, they're always winning the North Harbour comp, knowing that they have to play the 1A team to get into the national top four. You could pretty much label them the biggest losers in terms of the context of making it to the top four, because they just never do. They just never have. They've had every opportunity. They've had so many opportunities after winning the North Harbour comp, and there's always just that 1A dark cloud over the top of them going, we have to play these guys. Whoever wins this, we have to play them. We have to play that team. They almost did it against St. Peter's in 2018. In 2018, when St. Peter's went on that run and they won national title, they were seconds away from winning, and then St. Peter's scored right at the end to knock them off, and then they went on to the finals and to win that year. Westlake almost won at that time. Watching the game, and I knew, and I remember, and I talked about it too, is just like, I knew Westlake would rather have Kelston than have St. Peter's in terms of playing for the national, playing for the road to the top four. They just matched up really well with Kelston Boys, and it paid off. It really did. It paid off. I think if they had to play St. Peter's, I don't think they would have won. I don't think they have that team, and most of the time when you look at any kind of sports, it's more about matchups more than anything else. Even rankings don't really matter at this point in time. This deep in the season, rankings don't really matter, because you're playing for something that's more. You're playing for something that's more. The stakes are just a lot more higher, and then you're just more in tune for what's going on and how you want to perform and whatever. So I always knew that at this point, that once Kelston Boys won that national that 1A, I knew that Kelston Boys were going to be in a shock for their first loss, and that's why I didn't really pick who I thought would win and give my prediction for it, because I really didn't know. I didn't automatically say it's going to be the 118, because I knew that there was a big possibility that Westlake Boys was going to win. Even at the game, when I was kind of looking at everyone warming up and sort of talking to one of the parents, I was still thinking, I was like, I still don't know, who's going to turn up and who's going to be able to play. And like, if you guys go and watch it on, I think Multi TV have got it on their YouTube pages, that Westlake Boys was the bigger pack. The bigger pack and the older pack too. They have the best lock in the country, who I think is the best lock in the country, Tristan Cook. Jack Lee is also great as well. They still have Buddha as well up in the front row. They have Iggy in the front row as well, Oka. Luke Watson is also there as well. They have this forward pack who is not only tall, but they've also got a lot of size too. And they're an older group than what Kelson is. Kelson, on the other hand, was the more athletic, a lot quicker, moved a bit more smoother around the field in terms of being able to run with their backs in their midfield and stuff like that. Both Jarrells, Omatangi, like guys like that, and Joel up in the front row, him and Xavier, kind of they just weren't able to match up too well with how Westlake was as a forward pack alone. I thought Kelson had the better backs, but once that Westlake Boys forward pack took over, because if you watch it straight off the kickoff, Westlake Boys weren't prepared straight off that kickoff. They weren't focused. Like, you could just see that they were still stuck in the moment of like, we're here and we're playing this game and we could go here, and they weren't even like thinking about, oh shoot, there's a kickoff, like let's start playing. And then Kelson pretty much woke them up straight away with just that pressure, and then they kicked, and then on the next kickoff, that's when they started, and then they started getting this momentum on. Seeing Westlake play that way yesterday, on Saturday, was, I was impressed. I really was, and they showed so much confidence after that first kickoff, and they believed in themselves enough to even defend stronger. There was a point where I think Kelson made a mistake where they were bashing up on the line, and they did something like, it looked like something like 17 phases in a row in the front, in that forward pack, and they were just doing these little pick and goes, and they were sort of angling it to the middle of the field, but they were just making little runs at a time, and they were getting there. And I thought at some point there's going to be a break in that defensive line where they'll be able to score close enough to the middle of the field. And then they passed it out to the wing, which I thought which took them back. And then 2 phases later after that, I think there was a turnover. I think Luke Watson was the one that got the turnover. But I didn't understand why they created that space to go out wide when they were sort of winning that battle and numbers started falling off from Westlake Boys. And I think that was one of like the big turning points for that game was sort of that moment and sort of that situation that they were in. And I thought that situation was great, and that if they scored off that, I didn't think that Westlake would be able to sort of come back from that, because Kelson Boys was already ahead, I think, at that point, but they were only up by 3 points, and then just sort of making that extra lead, being placed right in front of sort of the goalpost as well, would have given them that extra, the extra confidence in what in their game and in their abilities. But yeah, and it's hard to sort of look back on those moments too, because you don't You kind of don't want them too much thinking about those kind of situations, right? You don't really want them looking at those situations going, yeah, that was my fault and whatever. It's like, no. You got a whole 70 minutes to change the course of a game. Like, it's not one of those things. It's just like one of those key moments, but it's your opportunity to create key moments in games and create opportunities and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not down to one person, one play or anything like that. Everyone's got the same 70 minutes. Just figure out how you're going to navigate your space in that 70 minutes. I mean, if you look at even like that game on TV with Silverstream and Napier, is the same thing. Is it like everyone's so worried about the fact that they drew, and then with the draw the win was given to Napier Boys because they scored most tries.
Come on, Brad! Come on, Isaac!
Having the argument after the game about the ruling doesn't do anything, It doesn't do anything at all. Because that's the conditions that everyone has chosen to play, and that's how it is. And it's always reviewed, and even coaches themselves say that it's that they agree to those terms. Like, everyone knew that that's what the rule is. Just because it was now taken into effect, everyone now has a problem with it. And usually it's just the new ones that have a problem with it, because really it's like high school kids only last like 2 or 3 years in first 15, and so you got new parents all the time. And even next year when it happens again, at some point, those parents are also going to have an argument about it. It's like, well, why don't we play extra time? Why don't we, kick penalties? Or why don't we this and that, and have their own little spiel about how you should fix it? The thing is that, from my understanding, and it's an international rule, that you don't have extra time in those drawn games. People will say that under 15s had played extra time. Fine, let them deal with it. But why should you break the rules on national TV in front of everybody for them to also be questioned? What if they take the game away from them and say that, no, we're suspending you guys for that? You can't play the game. All those kind of arguments is kind of like, is besides the point. If you don't want to draw, don't lose the game. Like, don't make it come down to that, where the rule gets to choose who wins that game instead of you scoring more points. I just don't understand. I think it's just a lot of moaning. Like, people just want to complain. They just want to complain about how, and want to share their opinions. Like, this is what I want to say. Like, this is what I think about it. It's like, well, I don't care what you think about it. It's not the rule. If you want to change it, make a big deal about it and change it. Go and try and change it. If you think it's stupid, go try and change it. Don't just complain and just want to be heard and moan and complain just because that's your favorite thing to do, is moan and complain about it. That was my thing. Is like, I don't really care what the rules are. If that's what the rules are, that's what the rules are. If you don't really like it, complain and try and change it. That was always my thing. Most people don't really look to have draws in the game. So just win the game. Do your best to win the game and not come down to those situations. It was hard to see because the game was so good. And my thing too is that Napier Boys played so good, and it just wasn't turning into points. I felt like Napier Boys left a few tries out there, and I think Napier Boys let themselves down a bit. And I've seen Napier Boys play almost every single game this year. I've almost seen all of their games this year. And this wasn't one of their brightest games at all. It really wasn't. I think people seeing them for the first time thought they're seeing, Max Ratcliffe or Gus Brown, Jared Martin, who's such a underrated player, Tyron Crystal, Tasman I like a lot, year 12 Tasman, who I think everyone should watch out for next year as one of the main props coming through. But I think that people seeing them, even Angus as well, who one of the locks is that people seeing them probably thought they had a really good game. Myself, who I've seen them so many times this year, I don't think they played great. I really don't think they had their best game. I don't think that Max played his best. I don't think that Gus played his best. I don't think that Gus Brown played his best. Angus, I don't think he played his best. Jared was okay. Onasai was okay. What's his name? Tasman was okay. And I was I really was kind of disappointed in the way they played, even though they made it, they won the game. I thought that they had a few more tries that they should have scored. And luckily that CJ had a good game. Angus had a pretty good, what's his name? Josh Augustine had a pretty good game. Corey and Joel at 9 and 10 were okay, but I've seen them have better games, and the team as a whole, to me, was not the same team that I've seen all this year. And even though they come out with the win, I feel like they should have done better, and I feel like I don't think that they were too impressed with their performance on the night too, because they also know that they've played a lot better than this and a lot better game and a lot harder teams and different in their own Super A competition. And they're also going to have to try and fix it up before the Westlake game, because they match up really well to Westlake Boys. And Westlake Boys is like their team. Their team doesn't want to play a team like Napier Boys. But if Napier Boys played the way that they played on Friday night against Silverstream, who struggled sometimes in the scrums, I think Senele actually proved how good he was as a prop and how good he was as a scrummager, and I still think he's the best scrummager in New Zealand, and showed it. And this is how I know that he is the best scrummager, is because he went up against Gus Brown. He destroyed Gus Brown in two of those encounters, and it's the first time that I've ever seen Gus Brown have to really scrum properly and really try hard properly at the scrums. I've seen Gus Brown pretty much all year engage into a scrum and sort of stand up and then sprint away. This was fine. I leaned into it. I did all my fundamentals, pushed my shoulders back, had my chest out, put my hips squared, all that kind of stuff. Feet were great. I engaged, push, held the tension, whatever, and then I'd see Gus Brown just sprint away like nothing happened. I did not see the same thing as that. Once he got destroyed a couple of times and he could have sort of switched on, he's like, oh shoot, I have to actually scrum against someone like this. That's how I knew, because after a while, Gus was not sprinting away from these scrums. And Senele is probably the best scrummager in New Zealand that we have. And it takes, and I think when Tuli came on, I think he physically went at him. And being the fresher guy, did the right thing and just really put the pressure on him too, to make him scrum the way that he wanted to scrum. And it paid off. coming into this game against Westlake Boys, I think that Gus Brown is going to go back to it, and he's going to be the dynamic player that he actually is. He probably didn't play as well as I thought he should have played because he was taking up more time in the scrums, and he was putting in more energy and effort into the scrums. That when it came to all the other stuff, he just wasn't quite there. Usually Gus Brown makes all these big breaks. Same thing with Max Ratcliffe is the same thing. Is that like he did have some good plays, but I've seen him make more plays. I've seen him, do a lot more with a lot less too, in terms of the way that he carried the ball. And matching up with Westlake Boys, Westlake don't want a team like this. Just the same kind of thing that they didn't want a team like St. Peter's, is that matchup, they just don't match up well against them. And it's going to be all forward pack. Backlines are great. The backlines are pretty evenly, I guess, balanced out. The only problem will be Joel and Corey at 9 and 10. But everybody else on the field, I think they're pretty well balanced. That forward pack, however, is that the physical encounter and physical clash that they have to have, Westlake have to step that up because they're not really at that same level that Napier Boys is at. But this is going to be the first time that I think that a Westlake final and a John McGlashan final is going to be, that's going to be like history. And it's going to be historic for both teams, and it's going to be historic for whoever wins it at the end too. And even having that moment of thinking about it too is just like, wow. We don't get to see stuff like this all the time. We don't get to see two teams that have never been there before make it in the same year, and at the end have to battle to see who wins it on their first go. And in all honesty, Westlake have the better chance of making it back to the finals than John McGlashan does. But they got a Mount Everest of 1A to deal with every single year. And John McGlashan is just not a reloading school. They're an actual rebuilding school, and a rebuilding school for them takes 4 or 5 years. Takes recruitment and 4 or 5 years. That's what it takes. Westlake kind of is just a reloading school. They got so much boys, they got so much talent. They have, and remember, like they have a heavy league influence too. Like their number 6 Elijah is a league player from Blindside. He's not a rugby player, and you can see the way that he runs too. He's a league player, and I hope league scouts are looking at him and they pick him up, because he would definitely be a solid prop to have in your team running the ball, and he's exactly the kind of guy that you want, because even against Kelston Boys, he really made those fellas work. He really made Kelston Boys work, and he will also be one of the keys as well for this Napier game. He'll be also one of the, and I spoke about this before, is that they needed to get more running from him, and his matchup with Max Ratcliffe, Elijah Rasmussen against Max Ratcliffe is going to be probably the matchup to watch, is those two, and to see how effective they are in the game. Not just running the ball though, they have to go out there and do a lot more things. Max Ratcliffe is one of the best players in the country for a reason, because he doesn't just run the ball, but he makes tackles. He's effective with everything that he kind of does. Elijah, on the other hand, is a running game. He's a ball runner that is just an exceptional ball runner. But he's got to pick up his work rate on other things, He's got to pick up his work rate on cleaning out rucks, on being a support player, being able to, digest the information faster and be able to be effective with whatever his next moves are, because that's kind of not how he plays. He's an offensive giant, and that's what he does. He's got to pick it up on the other side if that matchup is going to work out well. Buddha is going to be the same with Gus Brown, is that he has to, even though he's a big, I think he's Fijian kid, huge, intimidating fella, he's going to have Gus Brown to deal with too, and it's going to be on that side of things as well. Napier Boys, on the other hand, have to deal with looking at Tristan Cook and seeing how effective that guy is. Not even in just lineouts. It's like whenever he touches the ball and his decision making of offloads and second chance play, that's where Tristan Cook also has the advantage over most guys, is because he doesn't really make that many mistakes. He's not one of those guys that throws 50-50 passes at all. He usually assesses it pretty quickly and then finds out, he's like, nah, I'll just keep the ball, I'll hold it, or I'll just hold it a bit longer, then I'll give it late, and then he's one of those guys that will give the ball and then be the first one to clean out straight away. He's one of those kind of guys. The other thing is that Napier probably can't do the things that they've done in the lineouts throughout this whole year, because when you got someone like Tristan Cook, and even Jack Lee, is like, both of them two are, Tristan was probably the best lock in the country to me, and I feel like he's shown it this whole year, but Jack Lee isn't that far behind him. He's also a really good lock too. And the way that Napier Boys just throws up Gus Brown and everything is just like, I think you guys need to mix up these options, because Tristan's just going to be like, I'll just get in front of him, get the, wrestle with him at the top of the lineouts and pull the ball down, things like that. I think it's different when you've got elite locks in front of you. When you've got elite locks like what Tristan is a bit different. But come Friday, there's going to be maybe we do have history coming up with Westlake Boys and John McGlashan beating out two Super 8 teams, which will be pretty new and, I guess fun for everybody else. I think it would be pretty cool if John McGlashan and Westlake Boys make it through. But again, you're still dealing with two Super 8 power teams. Hamilton Boys was one of the biggest histories that you could ever rack up in first 15 rugby, especially later from 2000s onward. And then Napier Boys, who are also not new to the scene of the top four. It's going to be a hard task for both of those teams, John McGlashan and that. To me, John McGlashan has the upside over Hamilton Boys right now. Napier and Westlake are sort of similar in that same kind of realm. I think Napier might have the edge as of right now, but it's not out of the realm of saying Westlake could win this game, because they definitely can. They've definitely shown that they can do it, and that could be a possibility come Friday. Anyway, that's me for Monday morning meeting. Later, Bolt.
Come on, Swans! Come on, boys! Take them!